Hey everyone, good morning and good evening. This is great to see you here, our online forum for global organizational tacit knowledge management. And we are privileged to have many speakers here today, around 14 speakers, to share their global thoughts about tacit knowledge management. And I'm so pleased to give you the first introduction about our first speaker, Dr. Katrina Pugh. And Dr. Katrina is a consultant and author at AlignConsulting, adjunct faculty at Columbia University, principal and co-founder of Plastic Free Islands Network. And Dr. Katrina has 30 years of experience designing and leading strategy, information management, and collaboration. She has led dozens of complex programs, helping organizations to activate the knowledge of teams, divisions, and communities. Her firms and clients have included the World Bank, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, JP Morgan, Intel, Fidelity, EY, United Nations. And as an educator, Dr. Pugh has also been teaching on information strategy, networks, and collaborations in the Columbia University Information and Knowledge Strategy Master of Science program for 11 years and was its academic director for 6 years. So today, we are very pleased to have the doctor to give us a lecture, the role of tacit knowledge in strategy and design. So please, doctor, it's your time.
Thank you very much. What a lovely introduction. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and let me know if you guys can see it. How is that?
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Well, I'm delighted to be here today, and how uplifting all of those statements were. I am hoping that I'll be able to continue that high energy and that enthusiasm for this program. As Jack said, I have been working in tacit knowledge for a number of years. I first was interested in tacit knowledge when I was in graduate school at MIT in the 90s. Today, I'm going to talk to you both about a methodology for tacit knowledge, which is the subject of my book, Sharing Hidden Know-How, which came out now 10 years ago. And I'm also going to give you several examples, most notably an example from the World Bank. So we're going to talk a little bit about how intangible assets, that is tacit knowledge, drive the economy. We're going to talk about the relationship between tacit knowledge and innovation and design. And then we're going to talk about the practice, as I said. If you look at this slide, it goes without saying that our economy runs on tacit knowledge. Over 82% of the Standard & Poor's, these are 21 numbers and it's still true today, 84% is tacit knowledge when you subtract the market, the book value from the market value. With that in mind, it is imperative that we understand how to manage tacit knowledge. It is also the essence of innovation. What I'm sharing with you here is an innovation model that's not necessarily linear, but does describe the composition of innovation from idea through to practice. And you will realize that every one of these elements involves collaboration. Every one of these elements involves conversation and the sharing of tacit knowledge. So for example, bridging, which is getting ideas from one place and being able to rapidly apply them elsewhere. Next, social and operational integration, being able to think about with your peers the relevance of those very ideas, determining whether or not they're going to play out in markets. Next, it's capabilities validation. For us to be able to assess the relevance and the applicability of the capabilities of our firm, we have to be able to have conversation. We have to have sounding boards inside and outside our organizations. For market and industry exploration, similarly, we need to be able to have processes that are collaborative and that involve tacit knowledge, both for assessing the size of the market and discerning a market entry. And then finally, throughout the whole commercialization process, it's all about rapidly consuming information that we gather at the front line, feeding it back into the organization and coming up with new ideas. As I said, this isn't a linear process. And the essence of tacit knowledge is for us to be able to see those opportunities and to exploit them. So how do we exploit them? We exploit them as individuals operating as a system, operating as a social system. I love this quote because it expresses what Carl Weick so aptly said, that we often don't know what we know until we hear what we say. When I speak of tacit knowledge sharing, I underscore the importance of conversation. So tacit is social, conversation is imperative, but there are some obstacles. One obstacle is what we call blind spots. Frequently, we don't know where the knowledge lives. A second obstacle is frequently we get handed knowledge, finally, if we've drawn it out from others, and it's not the right volume, it's not the right detail. And then the third big problem is that the knowledge that we draw out oftentimes doesn't even make it into circulation. It might go into a repository, or it might go into an obscure step within a process that really isn't understandable. What you need to overcome those things are activities that you can practice inside your knowledge transfer process. The first is facilitation, and that is about planfully architecting the process and engaging people. The second is conversation, as I've mentioned to you before, which is about not only drawing out people who know something, but using the people who are interested in applying it to draw them out. And then finally, being very purposeful about putting the knowledge to work. Don't let it go to jail and sit in a repository. So we've talked about those three things, and you've also heard how they are the antidote to the blind spots, the mismatches, and the jail. This is a brief overview of what Knowledge Jam is, which is that collection of facilitation, conversation, and translation. And you can see at the bottom that it has 5 very common steps. But why those are so important is that they focus us. They keep us really concentrating on the knowledge that matters and making sure that we engage the people who are going to be putting the knowledge to work. Who participates in the jam? These are the names that we use. They should be familiar to you. The knowledge originators might be the people who have the knowledge. They might unwittingly have the knowledge, as you heard from Carl Weick, that they discover only in conversation. The next is the knowledge brokers. Those are the people who are going to be taking the knowledge back to their organizations. Third, a facilitator, somebody who convenes the group. They act as a project manager, and they also help to scaffold the jam, understanding what kinds of elements might be relevant. The sponsor will help fund, approve, put kind of clearance so that people can muck through what could be political. And then finally, the champion might be a person on the ground. Some of the amazing people who are supporting Fisher today and who have been supporting me have been serving as champions. So let's go through some of those 5 steps. In the select step, one critical thing we do is determine what knowledge we're going to go after. We can't, as they say, eat the elephant in one bite. So we want to ask about how relevant this particular subject is. Why would we care about, for example, some manufacturing slowdown or some issue that we're having with the supply chain? Why would we care about it? Because it's going to improve the performance of the business. It's going to improve job satisfaction. It's going to contribute to that innovation that we were talking about before. But at the same time, we also want to ask about the sharing feasibility. We can't go after all of the knowledge, as I said, and some knowledge is going to be inaccessible. Those people who are the knowledge originators need to be available. Those people who are going to be taking the knowledge into the future, that is the brokers, they too need to be available. The second step is the plan step. So once we've decided what knowledge we are going to go after, we want to be very thoughtful about what we're going to involve, when we're going to do it, how we're going to convene this conversation. It can't be a very lengthy process. It has to be efficient because we're engaging people who are precious. They have very many things on their agendas. So the facilitator goes about a number of these different steps. Oftentimes when you hire a good facilitator for a knowledge jam, you hire talent that's going to grow in your organization. They're often the most attractive because they have to think at such a wide level. The third step is what we call the discover capture step. This is what we hope is not more than about an hour to an hour and a half long gathering where we use conversation to draw out insights. Here, I'm sharing some conversation disciplines, which were in fact the subject of my last presentation. These are essential for drawing out what people know, having them encourage each other, and driving towards action. My research shows that a 10% increase in inclusion results in a 45% increase in the likelihood of action. More to learn on that with a review of that previous presentation for GO-TKM. The fourth step is to broker, and that's to make sure that the knowledge gets put to work. We certainly don't want to let the knowledge sit in jail. And you can see here an example of a template that was used to elicit the knowledge. And on the far right in yellow are some of the conclusions. They're going to make their way into the next innovation. This was actually done with Intel in 2006. This was the very first time ever in the world that Wi-Fi was brought onto a train. And you can see there were some really important insights we had about things like the vibration and the ruggedness of the antenna. Finally, we're getting on to the fifth step. This is called reuse. And this is where we're not just simply brokering it into society or into the organization to ensure we have better processes or products, but we're also measuring it. We're also advocating for the specific knowledge, making sure that those people who are seeking the knowledge, for example, I might be a broker, you might be a seeker, I'm making sure that you understand it. And I'm being a change agent as well. So you've learned about these 5 steps: select, plan, discover, capture, broker, and reuse. Let's talk about an example. What is a biannual activity that takes place at the World Bank? This is called Knowledge on a Mission, and it involves bringing together organizations that have fundamental issues that are going to impact the world, society, the environment, humanity. And they bring these challenges to a number of different knowledge practitioners and a number of different facilitators who in turn do knowledge jams, just like a hackathon. All around the room, we have teams who are taking these problems that have been identified by, in this case, when we did it in November, Shell and the Asian Development Bank. They're going after those big questions brought by them, and they're eliciting knowledge from people who have expertise on those problems. So you have a sponsor, in this case, the World Bank. You have brokers who are all of these knowledgeable people, and the brokers are helping out the Asian Development Bank, or in the past we had UNDP and the Olympic Committee. You have facilitators who are generally knowledge practitioners, and then the originators are all the people in the room. Now note, the brokers are the ones that are taking the knowledge back to their organizations. So for example, we had somebody from the Asian Development Bank who was responsible for imagining how it will play out when she took the knowledge back. This is a wonderful example of a knowledge jam for another reason. It tells you that it scales. It isn't only about a small group intimately discussing a problem and then a small number of brokers. This can be done en masse with a large group in a conference center, just like a hackathon. So let's summarize. Some great things happen with the Knowledge Jam. You know that it has these three practices of facilitation, conversation, and translation. And you also know that it involves these steps of select, plan, discover, capture, broker, and reuse, and that it can be scaled up. And let's talk about how you might be able to move forward and do your own process, just like this. Well, you need to be able to make a business case. One, you can talk to your leaders about the amount of tacit knowledge in the economy and how critical it is that it is exploited. And when there have been reorganizations and there have been changes in the society and in technology, there are many opportunities for knowledge leakage. Innovation processes depend on tacit knowledge. We need each other to bridge ideas from place to place, which are the kernel of subsequent products. Also, a lot of traditional methods of knowledge transfer, like the after-action review, results in what we call blind spots, which is ignorance about where the knowledge is, mismatches where knowledge is elicited and it's not relevant, and jails, which is that the knowledge ends up in a repository on a hard drive or in somebody's head and never gets put to work. And by using this combination of facilitation, conversation, and translation, we can be far more confident that knowledge is going to be getting out, that the right knowledge is going to be getting out, that innovation is going to occur as people are interacting, and that we can be reliably expecting that the knowledge will be put into practice. And what I encourage you to do is to start thinking about opportunities for discovering knowledge, selecting it for this process, engaging a sponsor to provide some leadership and oversight, and thinking about the relevancy of that knowledge for an innovation process, for a specific business. In the example that we were talking about before, which was at the World Bank, we had brought in Shell in November, and they talked about going to net zero carbon footprint for their factories. So there was lots of ideas coming up. And the critical point of this was that the ideas needed to be going to work. They couldn't just be all spread out. They needed to be translated into relevant practices and products. And so I am delighted to be here. I encourage you all to spend time, if you don't even have time to do an entire process, just think about these three practices of facilitation, conversation, and translation. My final slide here in the appendix after my bio is a lot of helpful resources. Most of these are free, and I encourage you to get knowledgeable about knowledge practices. Thank you very much. It's been wonderful to be here today, and I can still feel the wonderful energy of all of those earlier statements.
Hey, Dr. Katrina, thank you so much for your wonderful speech. Excellent. And well, this is the first one. Everybody have your knowledge sharing about tacit knowledge management. This is great. And so if anything you want to emphasize, at the end of the speech, what is the key takeaway you want people here to get from your speech? Maybe just to give one or two key bullet points.
Well, first, while there is a methodology, and you're going to be hearing methodologies throughout this conference, there are some ways to think about conversation and ways to think about innovation that can filter through all of those methodologies. One is that in conversation, if we're able to respect each other, we can draw each other out.
Yep.
So I know Joelle is here. We are friends. We've known each other for almost 10 years. Actually, we have known each other for 10 years. And one of the beauties of story is that it is a dialogue and it draws each other out. And one kind of hazard of tacit knowledge we've talked about is jail, right? Right? That's such an important thing. And then the second thing that I would just encourage you all to think about is it's really about teamwork. And no matter how hard you try to elicit knowledge and make it into a document, it's very, very important to know who is going to be consuming it and give them a job. Make sure that they're involved or they're going to be brokering that knowledge to another place.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Katrina. So we remember the two key words, the methodology and teamwork for the tacit knowledge management. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day, wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye. Good. So now let's move to the second lecture.